everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am your host, Taylor Rockwell. Joining me, as always, on the other end of the line, I've got Mr. Ryan Bailey. Hello, Ryan.
Hello there, Tay. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. I feel enlightened. I woke up this morning because I was driving all day yesterday. I woke up this morning to watch lots of different stuff, and I learned that the throw-in rules have changed. I was not aware about where your foot can be in relation to a throw-in, but I learned that from Everton and Arsenal.
Go on.
Yeah, so I thought if your foot was on the field at all, it was a foul throw.
Right.
So when Everton got their goal off of the long throw, I thought I was going to be all crafty and smart, and I had figured something out that we could discuss. And then the match of the day guys broke it down really quickly, and we're like, oh yeah, your foot can be on there as long as any part of your foot is on the line, it's fair game. And I did not know that, and that pretty much put an end to that entire talking point. So I'm bringing it up now to say I've learned a new thing, Ryan, and I feel good about it.
Well, aren't we all just getting enriched every day of our lives, Tay? That's wonderful. But I think throw-ins are one of my biggest bugbears of playing rec soccer. I think maybe 5 to 10% of throw-ins are legitimate in the games I seem to play. Never goes behind it. The ball never goes behind the head for anybody.
The ball never goes behind the head, and then not just at amateur level, but especially at professional level. What did you call it? Did you call it a bugbear?
Bugbear? What do you call that?
Yeah.
Is that an English
yeah,
thing?
That's fine. Yeah, that works for me. One of mine is the idea of like the player taking it and then walking forward 10 yards and then not taking the throw and then walking another 5 yards. And somehow they managed to turn like a defensive throw-in by their own corner flag into an attacking throw-in by the other corner flag. I don't know how players are able to do that, but it's routinely allowed to happen.
We need magic spray for throw-ins. That's what we need.
That we're getting there. But I suppose we should move away from throw-ins to talk about lots of different action from the weekend. Obviously,
Yeah,
we're gonna
absolutely.
Talk FA Cup.
So we're going to get into AFC Wimbledon, Accrington Stanley at the top, right?
I mean, that was my plan. I thought we could do a tight 20 on that one. And it would mostly just be you talking, I'm assuming.
You can rein me in at 25, fine.
That's fair. We are going to talk FA Cup semifinals. One, I think, as you said before we started recording, one very good, one sort of good. We've got Juventus, Milan. We've got Barcelona, Atletico Madrid. We've got some other little things from around the world. But we're going to start with Der Klassiker. This did not go the way I thought it was going to go. Ryan, what were your expectations heading into this one? I know you wrote about it heading into the weekend. I'm assuming you did not expect 5-0.
I did not expect 5-0. I don't think many people did, to be honest. I was expecting definitely goals. I think this one hasn't been goalless in a very long time, the Classico matchup, since 2007, in fact. I went for a 2-2 draw. That's what I was predicting. I was only one goal off, but I was slightly wrong in where they were distributed. I'll admit that. Yeah. Wow, what a way for Bayern to make their mark on the top of the Bundesliga. I don't think any of us were expecting that kind of collapse,
not
particularly
at all.
a defensively collapse from Dortmund, right?
That was especially surprising. The only thing I can say, and it's a little, well, there's lots I can say, but to start off, the generic thing that I would say, and it's certainly an oversimplification, but we talk about nobody expecting it, but I do wonder if the Dortmund players were a little bit freaked out at first, because you look at some of the past results, the most recent result in this corresponding fixture, 6-0 for Bayern, 4-1 for Bayern, 5-1 for Bayern, and it does feel like Dortmund occasionally let the wheels come off in these types of encounters, and so I do wonder if Bayern scoring so early and looking so dominant so early did have Dortmund feeling a little bit like, oh, here we go again, oh no, oh no, oh no. And once you're in that, oh no, I hope this doesn't go poorly sort of mentality, you're no longer thinking, we're definitely going to get out there and win. You're thinking, I hope we don't end up losing, which is not the best perspective when you're trying to win the Bundesliga.
Well, no, definitely not. And obviously a very different mentality from the last meeting earlier in the season where they came back from twice from behind to win 3-2. Mm-hmm. So obviously something very different going through their heads at the moment. And I mean, you look at their last 3 visits to the Allianz Arena, 13-1 aggregate score to Bayern now. So obviously not a favourite ground for them to go to. I had high hopes for Dortmund because Bayern midweek, they had their DFB Pokal game where I think it was pretty bonkers. It was against a second-tier team, Heidenheim. Was it 5-4 in the end?
It was.
And then Freiburg the previous week was a disappointing result for Bayern as well. That was a draw. So I thought, coming into this, Bayern might have slightly lower confidence. Obviously, conceding 4 goals to a second-tier team bodes well for Dortmund coming in too. But what do you know? Turns out I know nothing.
To be. Well, so I think, no, I'm totally with you. And I also think that if you, I would have expected the way this went in the opening few minutes, especially with Mats Hummel's first goal, it looked like it should have been the opposite. That I'm with you, that Bayern having the midweek troubles, struggling last weekend, maybe you could have expected them to come in and just be a little bit flat, a little bit more defensive, a little bit more cautious. And instead, for this first goal, you go back and watch, and it's Dortmund in a kind of hybrid zone, more zone than man-to-man. But with that, you have to attack the ball. You have to attack your zone. You cannot be reactive. And that's exactly what Piszczek and Akanji are. They both kind of just stand where they are, and then they both just jump straight up in the air. And if you're Mats Hummels and you have any sort of momentum, you're going to win that ball. And that, to me, was the incredibly eye-opening that Dortmund kind of came into this one and were literally jumping from their heels in the first couple minutes and just totally backed off of Bayern, and that continued on the free kick by Thiago that was taken short. Again, Dortmund really slow to react, and I would say too high up the field as well with where they tried to set their line, and it just felt like Dortmund were flat-footed from the beginning, pretty much all the way through the end of the first half. They did a little bit of damage control, but obviously then Bayern able to get the late fifth goal. What did you make of Dortmund's defensive approach? Or do you think it was just Bayern being this good and Dortmund being that sloppy?
I mean, are we going to call it a defensive approach? Can we use
That's
that term
a very
for what
question.
happened here? It just didn't go as I expected. As you say, Dortmund came out early. I think it was Dahoud when he hit the post. That was before the first goal, wasn't it?
Yep.
And it seemed to me like it was a lot of set piece issues, even when the goals didn't come from set pieces, like Gnabry's header from the Muller cross for 4-0. That was kind of like a set piece, wasn't it? And then you had, of course, the 1-0 corner, and a 3-0 was the volley for Martinez had. Well, Bayern had about 12 chances to have a shot, basically. And if you look at that 3-0 goal from the set piece, Muller had a volley. I think he was completely unmarked on that one. I counted 9 Dortmund players in the box. There were 5 Bayern players. How do 9 Dortmund players not deal with 5 Bayern players in the box from a set piece? I don't understand the maths of that. I'm no mathematician, but I don't get that.
I'm no mathematician either, but I can give you my best guess, which is that it felt like Dortmund sort of, once things went a little bit off the rails, once they got a little bit confused with some of those shots, they became very reactive. They became especially very ball-watchy, and I think that's what kept happening for this one. Yeah, they've got the numbers in the box, but if you're just kind of closing in on one player, they routinely weren't aware of the other players in the box until that player got a shot off. And in this case, basically, as you said, because Bayern got so many chances at it for the third goal, that by the time it goes to Martinez, sort of Dortmund are all over the place, and I don't think anybody even notices that Javi Martinez is at the top of the box. The only one who maybe does is Dahoud, who just stands there and ends up with hands on his knees, sort of looking around, hoping somebody else gets the blame.
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of standing there and not doing your job. I noticed that on a few goals,
And it's shocking to me, given the ramifications of this game and what it meant for Dortmund versus what it meant for Bayern. For Bayern, it's been a bit of a crisis season, and a couple months ago we were talking about how Dortmund are definitely going to win it. They're 9 points clear. There's no way Bayern find a way back. When is Niko Kovac going to be sacked? And here we are with Dortmund now second of the table. Bayern taking top spot. They're, I think, 1 point ahead. Goal difference is pretty much going to go Bayern's way unless something dramatic happens. So I have to say I'm very surprised. I did not think Niko Kovac would be able to turn this around the way he has. I think he's gotten the best out of a lot of his players, and the players who didn't fit his system, he sort of hasn't utilized or has utilized in more limited ways. And I think he's been able to turn this around, and I don't think I saw it coming. I certainly don't think Lucien Favre saw it coming, the way he kind of spent the second half just kind of staring into the void. He definitely seemed a little shell-shocked at the end of this.
Yeah, I think as were many people. The scoreline perhaps flatters Bayern a little bit just because Dortmund were so poor in many instances. You look at Serge Gnabry on the right. He was handed the key to the right channel. The freedom of the right channel for you, Serge Gnabry. You can do what you like down there. And I was wondering whether it's because Diallo, I think he was kind of rushed back from injury a little bit at left back. Maybe there was something in that. And when you looked at him on the 5th goal, when Kimmich, I think he passes it to Gnabry, and then there's a cross into Lewandowski. Easy finish for him. Once again, six Dortmund bodies in the box, 4 Bayern bodies in there. But Diallo, he barely chases Gnabry as he's breaking into the box. It's sort of a casual jog. And I was wondering if there was some rush back from injury issues there. But it wasn't just him, Zagadou had that terrible giveaway for Lewandowski for his very nice bit of opportunism and finish from Lewandowski for the second goal. But it was just all over the park, particularly at the back. Dortmund were just not at the races. Just weren't up for this one in any way whatsoever.
I would agree entirely, and especially with that second goal with Zagadou's giveaway. Like, you see him get the ball, and it's not really like he comes under immense pressure and just kind of coughs up the ball or he miscontrols. He sort of telegraphs, I want to play this ball, and I think he's trying to maybe look back for Akanji and try to spread the field a little bit, but he just invites Robert Lewandowski in, then I think he thinks, oh, I'll just be able to kind of like put this over his leg, it won't be a problem, and instead Zagadou plays it right into Lewandowski. Credit to Lewandowski for then lifting it over over Roman Berkey and getting around him, and then it was a great instep finish, like an instep volley out of the air, which you don't always see, like a flying instep volley.
Yeah,
but it was really nice. But it was still just this sort of like moment of madness from Dortmund. But you can't really say it's a moment of madness when it happened 5 or 6 or 7 times in this game. And I'm with you that even on that final goal, it's Julian Weigl now who's come in. I think he replaces Zagadou at halftime, so that tells you how good of a game Zagadou had. Yeah. But it's Akanji and Weigl both just sort of track space. They try to cover a near post ball, and they don't even notice that Robert Lewandowski has held his run and then gets on the very end of it. He kind of changes that like little burst of pace at the very end and is able to finish, and it's what makes him so good, these 2 goals, that he's just sort of predatory and takes his chances when they're given. But it's also the case that like you can try to make life a little bit harder for him. And it just seemed like Dortmund were trying to maybe alleviate some of the responsibility and thus didn't necessarily do their defensive jobs the way we would have expected. And so here we are now with Bayern with a 5-0 win. And it does seem like the title race is in their hands. What do you think, Mr. Ryan Bailey? Do you think the title race is over, or is there still something for Dortmund to play for?
Oh, boy. When you look at Bayern Munich, they've got a lead in the Bundesliga where there's 8 games to go. They're not giving that up, are they? Are they giving that up? I don't think they're giving that up.
I think it's only 6.
Sorry, 34 games they play. Yeah, it's only 6 games to go.
Yeah, so I broke it down here, and Bayern Munich's remaining games: at Fortuna Düsseldorf, they're in 10th place, home to Werder Bremen, 8, at Nuremberg, 17th, home to Hanover, 18th, at Leipzig, and then home to Eintracht Frankfurt. That would be 3rd and 4th in the table. By comparison, Dortmund have Mainz, Freiburg, Schalke, Werder Bremen, Düsseldorf, and Gladbach on the final day. They're at Gladbach, who are 5th. So it is Munich with, theoretically, the harder run-in, especially at Leipzig, and then home to Eintracht Frankfurt, who are obviously Niko Kovac's previous employers. So I guess you could make the argument that Bayern really can't take their foot off the gas, but given that they're still alive in the DFB Pokal, obviously not alive in the Champions League anymore, that's one fewer competition for them to have to pay attention to. And it certainly feels like this is kind of Bayern's to lose, obviously, given the points difference right now. But it also feels like it's kind of such a dramatic result that it will be hard, in my opinion, for Dortmund to really continue to keep pace at the way that would be necessary for them to keep the title within their grasp, or potentially theoretically within their grasp.
I think you're exactly right there. And I think actually Dortmund will keep pace. I think you look at the next 3 games against lower half sides, as you said, and then they've got the game against, Schalke being one of those lower half sides. And if they're going to get up for any game, it's going to be against Schalke, surely. Yeah. But I still don't think that would be enough to catch Bayern now, frankly. I think they're going to be full credit to Kovac in the Rundrocker here. The way the first half of the season so different to the second half, and I just think they've got the momentum now, and game over.
I think the other thing for me, when you mentioned that Schalke game, it does feel like a game that I look at as, yes, Schalke are 14th, they're having a terrible season, manager fired, things not going well, but it's still that derby. And when it's that derby, and you know that Schalke will want to raise their game, and if there were a game that they were going to do it, the idea of really ruining their main rival's title challenge, that has to appeal. And I think even a draw there really causes Dortmund huge problems. So even though Schalke are 14th, not having a good season, that is one of the games that I think I will really be looking to, that if Dortmund drop, then I definitely will be confident saying the title race is over. Then Bayern will lose 2 or 3 games, and suddenly it will be back on, and I'll look foolish.
Yeah. And of course, Dortmund-Schalke is the big rivalry for these 2 times, the Revier Derby. I think the Bayern-Dortmund Derby, I was thinking about this earlier, it's only sort of, in the last 20 years it's been, in the last 10 years it's been really meaningful. In the last 20 it's sort of evolved, hasn't it? It's kind of, Dortmund are Bayern are the Bavarians, sort of from the rich area. They've got the haughty attitude. They win a lot. Then you've got these chances coming from the heartland, the industrial heartland of Dortmund, from Gelsenkirchen area, and sort of taking them on. I think Bayern are known as the Stern des Südens, the Star of the South, and I think you can buy merchandise in the Dortmund area that's to the wording of the Death Star of the South. That's how they're viewed, basically. So there's definitely a view of who's the good guys and who's the bad guys in this one, but I just don't see the good guys catching up in this fight. I'm sorry, Dortmund fans.
I mean, Bayern fans might take a little bit of issue with you calling Bayern the bad guys. Dortmund
It wasn't
the good
me.
guys,
That wasn't me. That was the t-shirts I've seen. I'm just saying the t-shirt sellers. You can blame
the t-shirts.
But I will say that Bayern are the bad guys because there's two things they do at their stadium I don't like. One is they kind of flash the floodlights when they score. And it makes it look like there's like an air raid warning or something. I do
not like that at all.
Not a fan of that at all. I mean, I don't mind it when in modern stadiums sometimes they dim the lights as the teams come on to make it look a bit more dramatic. I can handle that. That's okay. But, don't flash. You're not at a house party. Don't flash the lights when you start pumping the music. Thank you very much. And the other thing is the advertising they do in the corners for the cellular phone company that sponsor them, where they have people dress in white to shape out the logo of the company that sponsors them. It feels very antithetical to the Bundesliga, that kind of thing, doesn't it?
I mean, I would agree with you, except that it's Bayern. And Bayern, they'll hype up a big event to announce a new tractor sponsorship and a new bus sponsor. So I think Bayern are not above doing whatever it takes to make their corporate overlords happy.
Sure.
And I'm sure a 5-0 win will do just that. But it is a strange, the way it's evolved. I think, to your initial point, going back to like with Jurgen Klopp coming in and it became this, super exciting gegenpressing, Dortmund all over the place, young players coming through, and they have this reputation. And it's funny because Bayern Munich played very exciting soccer, especially under Pep Guardiola. They tried different things. They took different tactical approaches. But I think you're absolutely right that what it always comes down to is Bayern have the money, and they're this kind of juggernaut. Dortmund are trying to do different things to see what can happen. They're almost like the Oakland A Moneyball sort of organization, even though in reality they're more than capable of spending money when they need to, if they want to. But they're certainly capable of selling those players. And I think it's the pilfering that comes into it, when similar to the Oakland A's in the Moneyball movie, when it's selling on their bigger players to their main rivals. Yeah. When you're looking at the kind of relationship between Dortmund and Bayern and the players that have gone usually one way and not the other. I think that probably factors into the Death Star equation as well.
When the first two goals are scored by Matt Hummels and Robert Lewandowski, it's not helpful when you're a Dortmund fan, is it, to be fair?
Oh, actually, thank you for reminding me of that, because I could not figure out, was Hummels trying not to celebrate? Do you recall this at all? He runs back, he gets mobbed, and he sort of hugs people. But I genuinely couldn't tell if it was more of a let's keep it calm, it's early in the game, we don't want to overreact, or if it was him trying to be respectful to Borussia Dortmund.
It definitely wasn't a pulling my shirt off and swinging it around my head, but at the same time, it wasn't the cliched fingers to the lips, no, I can't possibly be happy about scoring for my employer kind of situation. It was somewhere in the middle.
It was somewhere in the middle. We'll see how it plays out. I think I'm with you that feels like it's going to be another title for Bayern. We shall see how it all plays out, but obviously neither team will be competing in the Champions League since both have been eliminated. The Champions League does return this week, which brings us to today's sponsor, BR Live. BR Live are back to sponsor the show because the Champions League is back, and that's where you can watch all of the Champions League and Europa League action, plus UEFA Youth League and the Scottish Premier League, which is more exciting than ever because there are 4 Americans there, and that makes it more exciting than ever.
I like that. I love the fact that BR Live on the app has lots of obscure stuff. You can watch table tennis, lacrosse, and Scottish football. So some really, really out there stuff you can see on there. Besides the Champions League, I like that a lot.
I do appreciate that they also have the spoiler-free version, so you can watch a game without getting all the other scores. So if you just want to know what happened with one game, then watch the other game, you can do that without having everything ruined.
Yeah, definitely. And because I tend to watch a lot of games in the afternoon in my office on Champions League time, so I like the fact that I can use the app to have something on the iPad, something else on the TV, something else on the computer. I like the way they handle it. Definitely.
There we are. Well, you will need it this week because 4 games over two days. On Tuesday, you've got Spurs Man City on TNT. On Wednesday, you've got Manchester United versus Bayern. That one is also on TNT. But if you want to watch the undercard, I guess you could call it, although I think if you're a Liverpool, Porto, Ajax, or Juventus fan, you would say, how dare you? Those games, Liverpool v Porto, that's on Tuesday afternoon. Ajax, Juventus, that's on Wednesday afternoon. Both of those are available only on BR Live. You won't have them on another channel. It will be TNT for Spurs Man City, BR Live for Liverpool Porto. Again, United v Barcelona on TNT, Ajax Juventus on BR Live. That's the only way to catch those second 2 games.
I tell you what, though, I think my pick for Tuesday might actually be to watch the BR Live app and watch Liverpool Porto over Spurs Man City. Is that wrong to say that? I feel like I watched Porto, particularly in the games against Roma. I was very impressed with them, and a bit more of an unknown quantity than Spurs Man City. I think I might be tuning into that one.
What do you expect from that Spurs Man City game, though? Given how familiar you are, how much you read about Man City, do you think it will be Man City going there trying to get the win, or do you think it will be Man City happy with the draw to take it back home and get the result?
I think probably the latter. I think that Man City have a maximum of 12 games less this season, and they'll know that this is one that they can maybe lose. They can maybe lose this. They can maybe lose the second leg of the semi-final. They could maybe lose one more league game possibly. And I think if they know they've got a couple they can afford not to win, this could be one of them. That's my feeling.
And then I think it further explains why Liverpool v Porto, Liverpool at home, they had much success against Porto last year, but I think they'll want to get off to kind of a flying start to make sure that this one is almost done and dusted, if such a thing is possible, before doing the second leg, especially since they too are focused on the title. So I think you're right. Liverpool, Porto, more likely to have goals early on or early and often, because I think Liverpool are going to be going for it. What about Wednesday, Ryan? I think I'm a United fan, Manchester United fan, and I'm very nervous about Barcelona, but that Ajax-Juve game is equally appealing. So again, I think you got to get the BR Live app because that game's going to be pretty fascinating.
It definitely will be. I mean, obviously, Ajax's young guns are going to be very interesting to see in Juventus, and their recent storylines have been interesting to say the least. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on there. But I think of the two, I probably would want to watch Man United Barcelona. I was writing this morning about the 2008-09 season and that Champions League final. So I've got some residual memories in that one to watch that one too.
I have sad memories from that Champions League final, and my friend asked me when this draw was happening who I wanted for Manchester United, again, as a United fan. And I said Barcelona because this was, I think The Game did a whole segment on this, that like a month or two ago, when it felt like United were sort of riding that high, that Solskjaer had everything figured out, that suddenly there's this like Solskjaer magic and they're winning everything. Yeah. Barcelona were a little bit shakier, and it felt like it was a more even contest at the time. And I kind of had it in my mind that it really was going to be Leo Messi versus Manchester United, because that's the way it was kind of playing out at that point. Now, it feels like United have come back to earth a little bit. I think they're going to have a lot of issues to deal with and sort out before this game, whereas Barcelona are obviously in a decent run of form. We'll talk more about them in a little bit. So I'm pretty scared for Manchester United, and I expect it's going to be a very defensive game from them, and maybe a very defensive game from Barcelona, a little bit cautious, similar to what we're talking about with Man City, where they're maybe aware that they don't necessarily need to get the win here, but going back to the Camp Nou, they can definitely do that. So we may end up seeing two teams trying to out-counter each other, and I think Leo Messi could be the difference there. Out-counter
each other. I like the idea of that. I would be scared for you as well if I were you. I would be scared for you if I were you. That doesn't make any sense. I would be scared as well, Taylor. But I can't help the feeling that Barcelona could come and snatch some late goals, probably some Messi and Suarez goals in the death, as they seem to be doing in every single game these days.
There we are. So you can get the individual game passes, or you can get the BR Live Soccer Pass. You can go to brlive.com and you can sign up that way, or you can get just the app and sign up there. But again, Liverpool v Porto and Ajax Juventus, those games this week only available on BR Live, so check them out there. Now we also, Mr. Bailey, have checked out the FA Cup semifinals. Shall we talk about what happened this weekend? Do you want to start Man City Brighton and save Watford Wolves for later, or you want to do best first?
Yeah, let's do appetizer first of Man City before we get to the main course, I'd say. 1-0 for Man City here. I was expecting a low-scoring win for Man City because in the recent games where they've won against sort of lesser opposition, I don't want to call them that, but, not a big six side, against Bournemouth, against West Ham, against Fulham, the scoreline has been quite low, even though they've been massively dominant. And this wasn't quite the same storyline. They did get the low-scoring win, but this is the first time in a long time, Taylor, that I think City didn't play with as much style as I would expect from them.
Now, do you think that's because they just weren't up for it on the day, or do you think it's because they get that fourth-minute goal? And I think, for me personally, when they get that goal in the fourth or third minute, depending on your timekeeping, it did sort of feel like, all right, well, that's that. Like, it's going to be very difficult for Brighton now to go at City. City can kind of have the dominance that they need, and I do think maybe that allowed them to not be as sharp. So are you putting that on the early goal, or are you thinking that City just maybe weren't up for this occasion?
I think maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think City had 4 shots on target for the entire game, and for a team like City to only have that, I think that's quite telling. And Brighton had their opportunities as well. Let's not forget they countered a few times. They could have easily scored a couple of times as well. So it wasn't as if I think that City certainly would have felt better if they'd had a cushion of maybe one or two more goals. I don't think they were sitting back on the first goal necessarily from the outset there, but an early goal like that, a 4th-minute goal, does have the potential to ruin the rest of a game at an occasion like this at Wembley Stadium when there's so much at stake. I think maybe there is an element of that too. But the stunning thing about this, Taylor, I don't know if I follow the bookmakers odds, and before this game, Brighton were 30-1 for the win. A soccer team in the same league as their opponent were 30-1 in what is essentially a 2-horse race. Isn't that bananas?
I mean, I think if you're talking about the actual league they play in, yes, they're in the same league, but maybe slight differences in terms of the technical ability. I think that was very much on display for the first goal, so I'm not quite as surprised to hear about those long odds, especially given how good City have looked. But for that first goal, I mean, it's Aymeric Laporte with a beautiful ball over the top. I think it's knocked down by Bernardo Silva. Then it's an even better ball from Kevin De Bruyne, and it's a good, solid header from Gabriel Jesus. But that ball from De Bruyne that just beats two defenders, they can do nothing about it. It was just sort of City, it wasn't toying with Brighton, because you're absolutely right. Brighton had their chances, and it could have been very different. We'll talk about how that might have been different. But it was just this goal was just so oh, right, City are very, very good, that in the span of 10 seconds, they can go 60 yards and make it all look very intentional and planned out. And they all know exactly what they're doing. And I found that goal especially impressive, especially that ball from Laporte, and especially given the defensive actions he has later on. He has the one that's sort of cleared off the line. I thought it was a very solid game from him.
I agree. That was a lovely pass from De Bruyne out from the right as well. But also, it wasn't typical of City, I thought. I thought typical City, De Bruyne would have taken another touch or two and put the ball along the floor. And we saw that again at the end. I think there was very late in the game, there was a break. It was when Fernandinho gave away that free kick on the edge of the box. And City broke immediately from it. Jesus and Sterling absolutely bolting up the field. You're like, here we go, they're going to score here. And Jesus kind of volleyed a pass in the air to Sterling, and Sterling had no choice but to volley it himself, basically. Sorry, he didn't volley a pass. He put the pass in the air, which Sterling volleyed. And I thought, City, once again, stylish City from a few weeks ago, another couple of touches, ball along the floor, and a simple tap-in for Sterling. I thought it was markedly different. There was one or two occasions where that kind of thing happened. I thought that was interesting.
Well, the FA Cup is where good old school proper English soccer is played, right? Or football, excuse me. So maybe that's all they were trying to do.
Good old English proper soccer.
Yeah, exactly. It's not quite the expression, is it? I will say that there was some good proper English football nonsense. 32nd minute, Kyle Walker gets into it with Reza Jahanbakhsh.
Yeah.
Does not get a red card. I don't know how he managed to stay on the field.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously he definitely made a forward motion with his head. He was in contact with Jahanbakhsh's head. He was quite angry because he got quite blatantly shoved off the ball, but
and then stepped on.
His head dropped when he was and then stepped on as well. Yeah, and you could see the scrape on his leg afterwards. He wasn't entirely happy with that. I was surprised when it went to VAR that they didn't give it. Were they saying it was like a forehead wipe? Was that what he was doing rather than a butt? But yeah, you're right. It would have been a very, very different game had Kyle Walker gone off at that point, I think.
I think if Jahanbakhsh had sold it at all, I think he just was more so enraged that Kyle Walker had even tried that. You can see his eyes flare in the slow-mo replay. But because it's not about the amount of contact, it's not about the damage done, it's the intent to headbutt or the intent to kind of make that sort of contact is almost always going to be a red card. It was given to, I think, Marcus Rashford this season, to Richarlison as well this season, that exact same kind of incident. So to not see given here, I don't quite know what the referee was thinking. All I can figure is that with VAR, it came back and he said, yeah, I saw that and I don't think it's a red card. That's the only way I can figure that it didn't end up with Kyle Walker leaving the field. And then I just don't understand what he thought Kyle Walker was trying to do, nor do I understand what Kyle Walker was doing, because he gets shoved over and there's a little bit of a step on. I don't know if it's intentional or not. I think Jahanbakhsh is just trying to get that ball. Yeah. But when Kyle Walker gets up, he stands over him and kind of has a word, and he is clearly the aggressor at this point. It's gone from, he was fouled, to now he's being very aggressive. So then with that little headbutt, even if it's Kyle Walker trying to kind of do a little bit of gamesmanship and invite a violent act in response, it's still so obvious that he really, really, really got lucky here, because I think it could have been a red, probably should have been a red, and it may well have changed things for City. I think Pep Guardiola would agree. I don't think he loved Kyle Walker's actions there. I think that's why we see some changes later on in the game. But it doesn't necessarily end up mattering because it's not going to be reviewed. There won't be any post-match suspensions, and it will be Man City advancing to play. Not Wolverhampton. Daryl Grove was sad about this one. Instead, it's going to be Watford, Ryan Bailey. Did you watch this one get live, and do you think this was all that it was built up to be?
Yeah, well, what do you mean by all it was built up to be? Because I didn't know
after the fact. I've heard it referred to. Yeah, not necessarily Watford Wolves was the showdown we've all been waiting for. More so that after the fact, I've kind of consistently heard it referred to as the best game in the FA Cup in a very long time, or the best semifinal in the history of the FA Cup. And I don't know if that's because we have such low expectations of the FA Cup that when something exciting happens, it increases to that level, and also maybe because Man City Brighton was sort of dull, this one by comparison was so exciting. So were you watching it live, and what did you make of it at full time? I guess at the end of extra time.
Yeah, I was indeed watching it, and I think this had the ingredients, all the classic ingredients of a really good game. You had a great atmosphere at Wembley, and I like the fact that Troy Deeney afterwards, he had a little pop at the in his interview, had a pop at the Man City atmosphere. So it was much better atmosphere than yesterday. Woo! Getting chirpy over there. Two teams who are I've heard being billed as the two best teams outside the top six in the Premier League. I think that's reasonably fair. Definitely both sides. I've enjoyed watching this season, and obviously had 5 goals and extra time and a lot of drama and some great stuff after the game as well, and a wrestling mask as well. What more could you ask from a game at Wembley Stadium on your weekend? Frankly, I thought this was pretty much game over as well after when Raul Jimenez scored and pulled out the aforementioned wrestling mask, which he got from a WWE wrestler called Sin Cara. I don't know anything about wrestling anymore, so I'll assume he is a famous wrestler. But at that point, 2-0, I was like, game over. This is Wolves to lose now, right?
Yeah, I was with you entirely, and it was Daryl and I did a pretty in-depth analysis of Wolverhampton's league win over Manchester United last week, and you could, for at least the first, 60, 70 minutes of this game, you could sort of replay that analysis because it worked very well for them here. They had the front two that allowed them to combine in Jimenez and Jota so that you didn't just have the one player up by themselves, but the back three and the way they kind of funneled pressure and really limited options for Watford. Yeah. And then I think when Wolves were willing to go forward, you saw them occasionally showcase a lot of technical ability and talent, but they were more than happy also to hit on the break, be very direct, cause problems, draw fouls, draw bookings, and for all the world, it felt like, okay, this is Wolves doing what Wolves do. They frustrate, they counter, they score, they frustrate, they counter and score again, and I 100% did not see this comeback happening. So I guess then my question becomes, was it was it some master tactical stroke from Javi Gracia, or do you think it was just that one goal from De La Feu was so good that it sort of maybe put Wolves on their heels a little bit, or kind of made them a little bit shocked, because other than that, it hadn't really been working for Watford. They had a few chances, but it didn't feel like anything sort of born of patterns of play. So when this goal comes off, I do wonder if maybe Wolves were just a little bit nervous because suddenly what seemed like a sure thing, them making it to the final, is now maybe a little bit questionable, and maybe that made them panic a little bit. Yeah,
definitely. I think there's an element of that, and I think Wolves, they look so fun going forward. I love their sort of wing back, Matt Doherty and Johnny on either wing. I think that they're wonderful to watch, and we saw Johnny had quite a lot of space, quite a lot of time, and Matt Doherty obviously getting the first goal and the assist for the second as well. Had a fantastic game. One of my favourite players of the season, particularly as he's a good fantasy player as well. That's another thing. But yeah, I think this is the cliche example of a substitute really turning a game. And De La Feu coming on was obviously the change for Watford and the one they needed. And I cannot say enough good things about that goal. We know from De La Feu that he's capable of these little blast of genius. He's one of those players, like when I first started watching soccer in the 90s and I saw David Ginola play live, I was like, wow, you can see everyone else on the field, he's on another level. The way he moves on the ball, his posture, the way he can, see other players. There's only a few kind of players like that, and I feel like De La Feu is one of them, where it's almost like the thing of where time slows down for him. And you look at the way in the box when he gets the ball there, picks it up with his right foot, has a little look, and then, there's 4 defenders in front of me. That's okay. I'm going to chip it over all of them and score one of the best goals of the season. I thought that was marvellous. And De La Feu, wow. Is he still the one that got away from La Masia?
I mean, it's up in the air because he is so up in the air. Sometimes he is unplayable and he is so like technically brilliant, and other times he is fairly anonymous. And so, like, yes, I think that maybe they miss him. Certainly with the way Coutinho's been playing. Talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But I think it was that kind of moment of brilliance is doubly important, because I appreciate you talking us through it, because it really sets the stage that, like, I don't think Wolves necessarily did that much wrong to allow this goal. Romain Saiz kind of fluffs the header. I think he ends up heading it like into his own foot, and then it spills to Deulofeu. But still, as you said, there's numbers in front of him.
Yeah.
And I go back to, it didn't seem necessarily like Watford kind of found Wolves out and found an area of vulnerability. It felt like this goal is just a moment of like genius from Deulofeu, and from there Wolves are now, you could see it in their fans too, that even when they were 2-0 up, the fans were just nervous. They haven't been here. They're very scared. Not scared, but they're very apprehensive, and I think that bleeds into the team, and I think it's reflected in the team that they start to get more defensive, they start to sit back, they're not as secure, and it leads to, I'm going to say, a silly penalty, because I don't think Dendoncker knew what he was necessarily doing. I don't think he even necessarily saw Troy Deeney, but it's just that moment of, I'm just trying to get this ball clear. I'm just trying to play desperate defense. And if you're a little bit calmer, if you have a little bit more precision, and if you're able to just kind of see that out, then you get that result. But instead, he makes a play. He doesn't see Deeney. He clips the leg. Maybe Troy Deeney makes a little bit of it, but I think given the position of the referee, the lateness of the game, that there was contact, I think that's always going to be a penalty.
Definitely. That's 100% a penalty for me. And by the way, probably the hardest penalty I've ever seen hit. I mean, if there wasn't a net, he would have broken someone's neck behind the goal with that shot, wouldn't he? It was, I love penalties like that. Power over placement, definitely. If I may just say
and I'm
one
really
more...
glad, really quickly, when you say that, though, if you don't mind, like, I'm really happy you bring that up, because watching it again, John Ruddy gets a hand to it. Like, he almost gets enough behind this one to make the save. He guesses the right way. He guesses the right, like, kind of height on it. If Troy Deeney doesn't hit that as hard as he possibly can, I think there's a decent chance it's saved. But the amount of power he puts behind it, it's a good reminder that pick a side, hit it as hard as you can, and you probably give yourself the best chance of finishing.
Yeah, I think journalist Tom Williams tweeted, everybody in the stadium except Ruddy knew that he was going to hit that down the middle really hard. And he did kind of get his arm to it, as you say. But I think if he'd have got more contact on it, he would have broken his arm. It was hit that hard. So I really love that goal, and it's not often that you can say you really love a penalty, and I really love that one. And just to go back one more time, just to the Deulofeu goal, if you watch it again, it's almost the way his foot moves. It's like he's dummying it. It's like it looks like he's making a pass across the box. Watch the way his foot swings out. It's almost like a golf chip, the way he hits it. Oh, so much technique. So two very different examples of how technique can score there.
This is very true, and I'm glad we've kind of like spent, no disrespect to Wolverhampton, but I'm glad we spent longer on the Watford goals, because I just want to point out again that like it felt so against the run of play and against the way this game seemed like it was going to go, because even like the Jimenez goal, the second goal for Wolves, like it looks like it's just sort of like, oh, there's a scrum, and like, oh, it's just kind of, he gets a foot to it, he finishes the volley. If you go back and watch it though, I mean, it's a designed set piece. It's designed to pull Watford out. It's designed to create overloads and allow basically Jimenez to make a really smart run. He stands offside, he checks back onside, and I think he does so at the exact same moment that the ball is being delivered. And I just like, all of that shows you how kind of choreographed and orchestrated and well planned out Wolves were.
Yeah.
And I bring that up to say that I think you kind of saw maybe them be a little bit too careful or too like planned out in their approach. Daryl texted me this one, that basically his argument was that Nuno, especially into extra time, kind of doubled down on the right wing, and that his thought was that's where they could kind of go at Watford, that's where they could create some problems. So his subs, he takes out John Moutinho, who brings on Adama Traore to play right winger, and essentially now Wolves have 2 center midfielders instead of 3. They still have 3 center backs, but that means they're basically attacking down the right side with an overload, which could work if you can get those numbers and make it happen, but it's basically Wolves focused on the right-hand side and trying to create something, and instead of that, they're no longer able to play through the middle and build patiently through the middle, and then if Watford win that ball back, suddenly there are opportunities through the middle, and I think you could see that for the Deulofeu winner, is that there's just a massive amount of space because Wolves are trying to overload, and it allows Watford to just capitalize and get that winner, and I think it was Nuno maybe just game planning a little bit too much, maybe overthinking it and thinking thinking, oh, we'll bring in this one player, we'll overload one side, that'll be the difference. And instead, it kind of ended up being the thing that cost them the game.
Yeah, definitely. I can see the sound logic there from Nuno for doing that. But as you say, called him out in the end. But once again, another classy Deulofeu finish. That was sort of a messy style finish, rounding his man and placing it like that. Oh, I've been a fan of his for a long time, Deulofeu. I was kind of surprised he ended up at Everton, but I think wonderful player, and as you say, he is a bit inconsistent, but just capable of games and moments like that. Really great stuff. And and the great thing about this game as well, it wasn't right to the death that this was going. There was another good 15 minutes of good action where I think Caballero went round the keeper in the last minute or so, and you thought, oh, this is going to go again. What a game. Great game. I'm very excited.
And then he ended up ended up kicking up on him, and that's why Nuno was air volleying things and looking very angry. And I'm sure he wasn't necessarily blaming Caballero, but I'm sure he was just more so frustrated by the way things played out in the end. And the way they ended up is Watford with a 3-2 win. I will also say, going back to your like comparison of, or like Deulofeu leaving Barcelona, that was such a messy finish from him, just the way, not like messy with a Y, but messy with an I.
Yeah.
That like he just gets it to slowly, insultingly roll past the goalkeeper and into the far side netting. It's the prettiest kind of goal because it's so insultingly slow. I really, really enjoyed it, even though I know it made Daryl Grove sad.
It was very messy, and I'm sorry for Daryl for this one because it was a great game, and either side could have won this one definitely, and you wouldn't have begrudged either side for losing it. But I like the way also this one fed into the Troy Deeney redemption narrative as well, because obviously hitting the world's hardest penalty and getting Watford into extra time, and he did some really good interview material afterwards. You could tell. I think he's going to be on TV when he retires, and there was a quote. He said, I was holding back the tears in this one. 12 years ago, I was paying £10 a week to play football, and now I'm in the final. And I saw someone tweet, I don't remember, but I wish every team had a player who cared as much as Troy Deeney. And you kind of get that vibe from him, don't you? And he's had his trouble past, been in prison and whatnot, but you can see he's got that sort of heart of gold. You can see he really passionately cares. And on occasions like this, it was his day, wasn't it?
It absolutely was, and I agree with you all about the passion, all about like his candidness. But that's the thing that really does it for me, is just he's just willing to talk. He's willing to tell you how he feels, what's going on, what he thought of a decision, what he thought of a decision that didn't go their way. And I think so often, and it's justifiable, I understand why, but so often athletes are concerned about their image, concerned about the kind of brand they're putting out, also concerned about kind of the like consequences of speaking too openly, too honestly. And so to hear Troy Deeney, just kind of put it all out there and not really mince words, and he's done that in the past. I think Daryl always goes back to the one he talked about with Arsenal, where he basically said, like, they're a team that we knew was kind of fragile, and we knew that if we hit them, we'd smash them. And like that sort of like, that's not a thing you really expect to hear from an athlete in the modern era. And I think that, again, is why Troy Deeney is so lovable and wonderful, which is saying something for a guy who, as you said, has been in prison and smashes penalties like he hates the ball.
He's a breath of fresh air, except if you're a football. I think we can conclude that.
All right, so we've got our FA Cup final set. Ryan Bailey, will Man City be doing the quadruple?
Yes, I think the FA Cup final is a pretty dead cert for Man City. They've beaten Watford their last 10 meetings, dating back many years. I think the Champions League, I think City have been accused of having an easy path in a lot of competitions, the League Cup and the FA Cup. And in the Champions League, they've got this game against Tottenham. Tottenham not being particularly in form. I think City have beaten Tottenham in their last 3 as well. And then obviously they get the winner of Juventus and Ajax. And I think avoiding Liverpool and Barcelona until the final is really important for them from a psychological standpoint, if anything. Then I think the trickiest thing in front of the quadruple is the league, because you've got, what have we got? Liverpool have got they've got Chelsea up next, and they've got Wolves on the last day. They've got a couple of difficult games, but City, they've got the game in hand, but that game in hand is the derby with Man United. And I'd be more worried about playing Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, because last season they very, very nearly lost to them. It was when they ended their 18-game winning streak, and it was 0-0 in the end. And of course, they lost to them this season too. And as I said earlier, City, 12 games to go, potentially a maximum of 12 games to go in this season. I think they can afford to lose a couple, as I mentioned, a couple of first legs in the Champions League, maybe even a league game if Liverpool do slip up again, and still get this quadruple. I'm going to stick my neck out, Tete. I think they're going to do it still. They've been the favourites in every competition they've been in this season. They are, I still think, the best Premier League team of all time. And if they can really show their mettle in the Champions League, something this team has not done before, then it's theirs.
All right. I mean, that you've made me believe a little bit more than I would like to believe. But I'm with you. I think it's possible. I'm also with you that I think that they can lose a few and still be okay. But I would say that the same is not the case when it comes to hair loss. See what I did there? Because 66% of men start to lose their hair by the age of 35. The issue is that once you've noticed it's thinning, it can be too late. So that's why you have to take decisive action early, and that's why our sponsor for today, Hims, a wellness brand for men, has got you covered. They are a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness for men.
Absolutely. Prescription solutions backed by science here, Tate. Science. Did you hear that? Science. I don't know how you feel about the age we're at. We're both in our mid-30s. I used to have a 4-head. I've got something more of a 5-head now. So this is something that interests me very much, Tate. And are you in the same boat?
I am very much in the same boat. I think I am fond of saying that my hairline isn't receding; it done recessed. But I am wary of hair loss products because, like, growing up, you had like the Seinfeld cream that made George's hair like burn and scalp burn, and then you have like the plugs, and you've got Hair Club for Men, and you've got all that stuff that you're kind of conditioned to think is maybe not necessarily going to work. But with Hims, you don't have those concerns. It's not snake oil. There's no gas station supplements. It's prescription solutions, as you said, Ryan, backed by science. And it means you don't have the kind of awkward doctor's visits. I always go back to when you have to make the phone call and the nurse or the receptionist answers that phone and you have to say, like, yeah, I want to talk to the doctor about my hair. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, the person ahead of you in line has a broken arm and the person ahead of them has like pneumonia and the flu. But yeah, sure. Talk about hair loss. So
hang on
I appreciate that you don't have those.
I agree with you here. I love that you don't have to have the awkward in-person doctor visit. You can now, for Hims, they connect you with a real doctor online. Could save you time and save, a bit more discreet that way. But when you book a doctor's appointment, are you telling the person on the phone what's wrong with you? Because you don't have to do that.
Well, you have to say reason for visit, or I guess you don't have to, but they'll say reason for visit. So, yeah, because I think they want to they don't really care. I think it's just to make me uncomfortable because I'm assuming that they're probably not even writing it down. They're just writing down name and then general answer. So I could just say, what? I think I just miss my doctor.
At your doctor's office, they're asking that question, reason for visit, and then when you tell them, they're sort of muffling the phone and going, hey, I've got one here. He's actually telling me.
See, I appreciate, Ryan, that you're not making me at all paranoid about going to see the doctor. So thank you for that. But if you, like me, maybe don't love going to the doctor, don't love waiting on hold, waiting for the receptionist to then you have to tell your medical malady, you don't have to do that because 4Hims connects you with real doctors. As you said online, it saves you hours and it's completely confidential and discreet. Best of all, listeners to Total Soccer Show can get started with Hims' complete hair kit for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last and subject to your doctor's approval. See their website for full details and safety information.
This could cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy somewhere else. So do it here.
Go to forhims.com/total soccer. That's forhims.com/total soccer. That's all one word. Forhims.com/total soccer. Thank you very much to Hims for sponsoring today's episode. Ryan, where should we go next? Shall we go to Italy? Shall we go to Spain? Shall we go to the United States?
Let's go to... if we're not going to go to AS Wimbledon versus Accrington Stanley, a very tense one from League One, why don't we go to Spain? Second best.
Okay. I think probably the big game that we have to talk about would be Barcelona 2 at Atletico. I always have to really emphasize that one because I think my natural speaking is to make it sound like it's Atletico, then people get mad. Atletico Madrid 0. A big win for Barcelona. We felt like maybe the title race was kind of already wrapped up there. This one definitely feels like it secures it. But it could have been very different. I think Atleti played the game they wanted to. I think they really did a good job to shut Barcelona down. I think one of the big differences here was the Diego Costa red card, because once you lose that player, if you're Atleti, and you're already going to be playing this kind of dogged defensive system that requires everybody to be in the right place at the right time, one fewer players makes that much harder.
Definitely. I think we could probably agree that Atletico looked like the better side for probably the first half an hour, maybe even the first half. They didn't do their sitting back and occasionally counter-attacking thing. It seemed like they really took the match to Barcelona, which was really good to watch. But yeah, Diego Costa, what a liability. I mean, that's not even a good red card to get. Insulting the referee verbally. I mean, we've got reports of what he said, and we can't repeat this on a family show, but it wasn't
I've got
great.
the edited version. Because if you didn't see this, he gets it's play stops, referee turns, there's a little bit of an incident. It looks for a moment like Costa has maybe like headbutted or made contact with the official. Replays, he just gets very close, he doesn't do anything. So then the commentators thought like, oh, there must have been some off the ball incident. He must have thrown an elbow or a punch. As far as I know, that is not the case. Instead, I think he just straight up insulted the referee. The edited version, I'm going to say, would be, I defecate on the promiscuous woman that birthed you, is how I'm going to phrase that one.
I'd love to hear Diego Costa say it like that. I'd love to hear that. Good sir, I defecate on your mother who was promiscuous in her youth.
I'm sure that's how he said it. It definitely wasn't several other expletives that you could put in there. But I did enjoy this led to a whole conversation on Reddit about how good the Spanish are at cursing, because their cursing is just so much more specific and devastating in a lot of ways than just all the different ways that you can say things and all the different ways that you could translate what he said. Spoiler alert, they're all very offensive. So I think no matter what, it was not a very wise thing to say. It was a thing that I'm sure happens more often than I realize, but you don't often see a player given a red card for, I guess, like foul and abusive language. Yeah. Usually you see that as like a second yellow, or you see it for dissent. But I guess, if you're going straight at the referee, getting in his face and saying that one, then it's probably grounds for ejection. Diego Simeone was pretty mad in the moment. I haven't heard much from him afterwards. So it seems like maybe he was like sort of eventually understood why it happened, but maybe he was also just focusing on really frustrating Barcelona, because I think they did that all the way up until Luis Suarez was finally able to find the back of the net. And I think they did that by being Atletico Madrid, which means frustrating their opponent to the massive extent possible. Aside from the 2 goals, the only other big chance for Barcelona came, Jordi Alba hits the post off of a long ball in.
That was nice.
But really, other than that, it was a lot of deflected shots. It was a lot of Atleti always kind of harassing Barcelona. Even a couple minutes before Luis Suarez eventually scores, he has one where he sort of is in space. But even just the ability to close down as quickly as Atleti do, it just puts him off, and it causes just a little bit more of like hesitation for him. And I think that's why he's not able to take his shot cleanly. Yeah. And then if you look at the goals they finally do score, it is when Atleti just give Barcelona a little bit too much time and space. Suarez is able to score from distance, and then Messi does Messi things, as he is wont to do.
Messi does Messi things. Deulofeu does Messi things too occasionally, doesn't he? I think this was the same story as, or similar story to the Villarreal game midweek, where Barcelona needed 2 late goals from Messi and Suarez to get a result. They did exactly the same thing here. And it seems like that's the clutch arrangement that they have going on for them right now. But I think Jan Oblak had a superb game. I think it could have been a much higher scoreline, because he made several really good saves from a few long shots that the Barca had. And as you say, Jordi Alba hit the post early on. And, Atleti had their chances. Griezmann had a decent chance first on. But I think really the turning point, as you say, was the red card. I think they ruined it for themselves there. In their last 11 games at the Camp Nou, Atleti have had 7 red cards. So, wow. I mean, it's not as if this isn't something they could have been expecting. It's obviously something that's been targeted in the past. Not that they've been targeted here, unless old UEFA Lona have put a referee in charge here whose mother was promiscuous, and it's really struck a nerve with him there. There's a conspiracy theory there, I think, definitely.
I feel like you're very close to getting a red card of your own, my friend. But that is kind of an amazing stat. Is it just, do you think the moment, do you think it's here's my theory. I won't put it all on you. I'll give you my theory. Without going back and looking at all those red cards and exactly what happened with them, I'm inclined to believe that it's Atleti's game plan of being so physical and in your face and aggressive and trying to kind of put you on your heels and make you a little bit apprehensive about going forward, or just making you second guess some decisions. I do think that lends itself to being overly aggressive at times, or putting in some reckless challenges, and that can easily lead to 1 yellow card becoming 2 and then a red card, or in this case, a straight red. So I do think maybe that's the downside of the Atleti game plan.
Yeah, definitely. I think there may be an element of the Camp Nou just being the sense of occasion of going there gets to them perhaps a little bit. They haven't won there since February 2006. And they don't have a great record on the road against them, obviously. That day, the last time they actually beat Barca in general, I believe, was the season when they won the league over them, 2014. So, not the best record against Barca in general, but I get the impression that to have that many red cards and to not get a result at this stadium in so long suggests to me there's something psychological going on as well.
I think so. And then I think once the psychological factors come into play and that red card comes out, then it becomes a matter of fatigue. And with both of these goals for Suarez, it's when he finally gets time, when he's able to settle and turn, and Thomas Partey just doesn't step to him as quickly because, again, they were in a 4-4-2, then a 4-4-1, essentially. That means it's two midfielders in there to Barcelona's three. Partey was all over the place, and I think this is the one moment when he really is just a little bit slow, probably because he's pretty exhausted, and he can't quite close down Luis Suarez the way he had earlier in the game. That's why Suarez is able to find the back of the net. And then I think even with Messi's goal, I mean, it's a lot of dribbling and it's a lot of messy moments, but it's still Jimenez and Godin kind of over pursuing and then standing off a little bit. And I think that's a product of, oh no, Leo Messi's in the box, you over pursue. Then, oh no, Leo Messi's still in the box. Now I don't want to be exposed and kind of posterized with a nutmeg or something embarrassing. So you stand off, and it's the diffusion of responsibility of neither one of them then really gets to him and causes him any level of discomfort.
Yeah.
And so he's then able to just very calmly finish, give Barcelona that 2-0 win, and I would say all but secure the La Liga title.
I think probably
the title, I believe I just said.
Bit of tautology for you there on a Monday. Wonderful stuff. 11 points clear. I don't think there's any catching. It could have been a very different story had they got the win. Would have been 5 points, obviously, between them at that point. But there's another point I wanted to raise about this, Tete.
Yes.
I saw a tweet about the one of my favourites, not crediting people for their tweets that I've seen, but saying that how Atleti went down to 10 men, but it was okay because Barcelona left Coutinho on and it evened things up. What's your take on Coutinho at the moment? I mean, there's this theory, and I point to a series of tweets that Graham Ruthven put up over the weekend, saying that he had a sort of theory that Barca always better without him. I mean, 6 minutes after he left the field, they scored a couple goals and went 2-0 up. And I've seen some theories about his position on the field, being on the left there, not being a peak position for him. He should be more central. But then I think, hang on, at Liverpool, didn't he do quite a little bit of cutting in from the left as well? What do you think?
I think I'll say this much, to be totally honest. I wouldn't say I can have the familiarity with Barcelona to be able to say oh, this is clearly how it's not working or why the system isn't working. What I will say is that I tend to lean on the opinions of experts like Graham Ruthven, and I think he is kind of on the money here, which is that Coutinho was brought in. It felt a little bit to me even then like a statement signing versus a necessity signing. I don't think I looked at that Barcelona team when he came in and thought oh, they are missing Felipe Coutinho. And then you kind of look at where does he fit with the players they have right now? I mean, I think if you're looking at a midfield three, is he better than throwing out a midfield of Rakitic, Vidal, and Busquets?
Right.
I mean, Vidal is certainly not in his prime anymore, but it doesn't feel like that necessarily fits Coutinho all that well. Then you've got Dembele, Messi, Suarez. I can't imagine Suarez and Messi losing out to Coutinho. And so I think it kind of always comes down to Coutinho has to really move his game to that next level to be able to stand out to the point where he is a consistent starter or he is guaranteed a place in the team. It always feels like he is sort of the John O'Shea role player who can be plugged in and is a much better player than John O'Shea. Shots fired at John O'Shea, I guess. But but isn't necessarily that next level player that they need, and so he ends up becoming a role player for them, and I don't think that's why they signed him. And then it doesn't allow him the kind of chemistry and familiarity and camaraderie within the team to kind of raise his game, and so he ends up looking like the player that's holding back, the kind of albatross, as opposed to the thing that's moving them forward.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And for the record, I think Coutinho actually had a pretty good game in this one, but obviously he's had his critics this season for certain things. I wonder whether because every week we talk about Messi breaking a new record, Messi scoring another amazing free kick, Messi, blah, blah, blah. And we've had earlier this season Suarez getting criticism for having a drop in form, and a few other players having criticism for having drop in form. I wonder if just by being in the same lineup as Messi, it draws attention to you when you're not absolutely stellar.
Yeah, I think that's definitely probably true. But I think then with Suarez, it's still Suarez. It's still that player who has performed for them at the biggest stages, in the biggest moments. You know he can come through eventually, and you kind of back that he probably will. And I think with Coutinho, you don't have that level of familiarity, and he's done it elsewhere. Certainly he did it at Liverpool on occasion, but he doesn't have that kind of guarantee that, but eventually he's going to do it, so you stick with him. It sort of is well, I hope he's going to do it, and he hasn't quite done it yet, but maybe he'll do it. But in the meantime, let's start somebody else. And so I think, you probably gets kind of an unfair comparison. And I would agree with your other point, which is that I don't think he was that bad.
No.
It wasn't as though he was sort of like giving the ball away and couldn't complete a pass. I think if you want a player like that, I would say Benjamin Mendy did not have a very good game, not with his possession for Man City.
Right.
So I think like that was a kind of standout bad game, whereas Coutinho, he just kind of like he couldn't quite get on the end of a ball, of like a through ball that like it was a good run. I went back and watched, and he's in the right place, he's making the right run. It's just a little bit off. But I think the way the media and the way the reaction goes to Barcelona, it's, well, Dembele would have gotten on the end of that ball. Rakitic might have gotten on the end of that ball. Why can't he get on the end of that ball? And it becomes that next level pressure once there's already blood in the water a little bit. Suddenly everybody starts swarming.
Going to be interesting to see Coutinho against Manchester United. Obviously, born and bred Liverpool sensation Coutinho against his fierce rivals Manchester United in midweek. It'll be lovely to see that. My favourite Barcelona moment from this weekend, by the way, Kevin Prince Boateng on Instagram. I don't know if you saw this. Someone commented on his Instagram, "Did you come to Barcelona just to take pictures?" And the crying, laughing emoji. Prince Boateng replied to it, "Yes, but very good pictures," and the shushing emoji, which I think is a perfect response.
I think it is too, and I think he's well within his rights, and I hope he takes lovely photos because I don't know how many minutes he'll be getting. But I do know that Barcelona look very strongly like they're going to win La Liga. Same goes for Juventus. They're 2-1.
They're not going to win La Liga this
Milan.
year. No, they're not. I'm sorry.
You don't think they're going to win La Liga?
No.
All right, fine. All right, but maybe Serie A. Maybe Serie A for Juve. I'd say very likely Serie A. And I would say lots to talk about from this game. But I'm going to start off with not necessarily trying to be. It's not controversial because I'm going to avoid talking about Bonucci. Daryl and I already did that last week, talking about his kind of comments on Moise Kean. But I will say that this game started off for me as like a tale of two Bonucci's. The Milan goal was, I would say, almost 100% his fault. He gives the ball away, then he is really aggressive trying to make up for it, and basically just steps out, can't make a play. Milan able to score, but then he sets up the penalty for Dybala. It's just almost a no look, like kind of out of nowhere through ball that bypasses probably 4 or 5 players, gets into Dybala taken out. It's the penalty, then Paulo Dybala takes it. But those two moments sort of show you Bonucci at his worst, being like overly ambitious and then overly aggressive.
Yeah.
And then at his best, being able to like win the ball, step forward, confidently play a ball in, and really create something at a time when Juventus totally needed it.
A tale of two Bonucci's. Charles Dickens couldn't have written it better himself, could he? Wonderful stuff there. Very poetic.
And they're both... And yet they're both still slightly tone deaf when it comes to race relations.
Oh, very nice, yeah. I mean,
yes.
the social justice warrior inside me, when Bonucci did make that defensive mistake for the first goal, was cheering very loudly. By the way, if I may just touch on this subject, I take solace in the fact that if Bonucci was playing in the Premier League, he would be booed at every stadium for the next couple of years. I take solace in the fact that would be something that would happen. That's all I want to say about that. But
he did. I would say also for... Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted.
No, you go.
I was going to say, and then for Moise Kean's winner, when he runs over the corner flag to celebrate, the whole team goes with him. They cut away at the very end, but Bonucci 100% is lingering and waiting for everyone else to leave so he can publicly hug Moise Kean, I think, and the camera cut away. And again, I was sort of like, I would have liked to see them like just to see if they actually have made peace, but also he didn't get that moment. It's Moise Kean's goal, it's Moise Kean's winner. He deserves all of the attention.
Definitely. And Moise Kean, by the way, hot stuff right now, right? Is there a hotter striker in continental Europe right now? I was going to say Piatek was up. So. Piatek's pretty darn hot. Obviously getting I think he's joint top scorer in Serie A, doing pretty darn well. That was his 8th goal.
Put it this way, he switched clubs in January. He is the top scorer for 2 different teams this season.
That's bananas, isn't it? 21 goals overall for Genoa and Milan. And I love the way that I only relatively recently discovered the correct way to pronounce his surname, Piatek. Always makes me think of someone who repairs pianos, like a piano tech.
Yep.
That's how I remember it.
Piatek?
Hey, get a Piatek over here. I need to tune this C chord up a little bit.
I mean, he's clinical enough. He's efficient enough. I feel like he could definitely do it with his feet. But I would say also Moise Kean justifying that hype with the winner. Not just that he scores the winner, but it's the way he did it, because first off, it's an incredible read from Pjanic to intercept a ball out of the back. Very similar to the giveaway that led to Milan's goal. This time it's Juventus' winner. Pjanic steps, wins the ball, drives into midfield, plays in Moise Kean, and it's a kind of complete goal from him because he runs at an angle where he opens up a little bit of space.
Yep.
The defender can't really step in between them for fear of then leaving space in behind for a through ball. So then it leaves the opportunity for Pjanic to play that ball across. Kean takes the first touch away from the defender, but sets it up perfectly for the second touch to be a shot and picks it inch perfect to be in the side netting. And so it's just like the run he makes, the first touch he makes, the shot he takes, it's all perfect for Moise Kean and gives Juve the 2-1 win.
Yeah, definitely. Real poacher's goal there. And didn't he sort of step, was it Mandzukic or Dybala? He kind of stepped on their run as well. And real sort of, I want this, I'm taking this kind of attitude from that goal as well. I thought it was very, very well done and a perfect response to everything that's been happening recently with him. And in this game as a whole, by the way, it seemed like I watched extended highlights. I must admit I didn't watch the whole thing of this one, but it seemed like Milan definitely had a lot of opportunities and, definitely could have got something out of this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think you had Chiellini not playing in this game, Bonucci starting as the center back in a back three. And they were a little bit all over the place at times. I think you had Çalhanoğlu on two different occasions hit free kicks that the Milan fans thought had gone in. So they definitely had their chances. It was not a kind of lockdown, there's no room for error for Milan sort of performance. Instead, I think it was kind of Juve being fortunate and taking the chances that they were given. And that's sort of what they do, and it's what kind of you have to do if you want to win the title.
Yeah.
Something that Juve have done on several occasions. That leads to the next question, though, Ryan. What do you think it takes for Juve to not be Serie A champions? Not this season, obviously, but what's going to have to happen for them next year, the year after? Would it be almost the one thing I was wondering is do you remember the 7 years in a row of Lyon winning Ligue 1?
Mm.
And then you had PSG come into existence with all the money. I did wonder if you have some foreign ownership group come in and just put all the money down. Does that make a difference? Is it players leaving Juventus? Is it just one team getting that much stronger? What do you think it's going to take for Juve to not be Serie A champion next season?
Maybe breakaway European League that they join and leave Serie A. That'd be the best solution. But in all seriousness, I think it has to be one of their competitors getting stronger because it doesn't seem like Juventus are going to be getting any weaker. They've got their own stadium, they've got all their revenue streams. They're only going to be getting stronger and signing the bigger players. Signing Ronaldo is such a big statement of intent from them this season. And we have seen, foreign owners come in at the Milan sides and try and pump up these sides, but they're still not quite, even Milan are still not quite at that back to being regular Champions League contenders status. So we need something more from them. And Napoli, Ancelotti, with that group of players, it's been shown how difficult it is to get to the Sarri level even. And they're not quite there as a competitor either. So I don't know, is it just the cynic in me says they need a lot of cash pumped into another team to give them a run, basically?
No, I think that's the practical answer because, you look at this team for a second. Cristiano Ronaldo not starting due to injury, but Sami Khedira did not start. Miralem Pjanic did not start. Even Moise Kean did not start. Blaise Matuidi didn't even play, nor did Giorgio Chiellini. This is a team that beat AC Milan, who are currently fifth in the table without, 4 or 5 of their best players?
Yeah.
So I just kind of can't believe how solid Juve looked even with the numbers that were missing. And I think you're absolutely right then that it's going to require one of their competitors, be it Napoli, be it Inter, maybe Milan, maybe Roma, maybe Lazio, who knows. But it's going to require significant investment. And it's going to also require a lack of turbulence because Milan have their ups and downs where it seems like they've got it figured out. Then something goes wrong. There's a lot of headlines. Inter, very much the same thing. And then you had the changes at Napoli this year with Jorginho and Sarri leaving, Ancelotti coming in. It does feel like the players have bought into that system a little bit more. But at this point, Napoli, second place, 20 points behind Juve. It feels like it's going to have to be sort of night and day investment, and maybe Juve really losing a couple of their key players for the entire season or selling them on for things to kind of get back to a level of parity where somebody else could even challenge for the title.
Yeah, definitely. But if I were Ajax, I'd be looking at that attacking down the right channel, down Juventus' left channel. I think Suso had a lot of fortune down there, it seemed to me, in that game. So I'd be looking at that area. But as you say, very strong. And it's terribly boring that they keep winning Serie A.
One more talking point from the weekend, and then we will bring this one to a close. Let's go to the U.S., to Washington, D.C. It was D.C. United, then top of the Eastern Conference, taking on LAFC, then top of the Western Conference. LAFC, still top of the West. I don't know if D.C. is still top of the East, but I know LAFC are top of the West because of their resounding victory over D.C. United. I want to start, Ryan Bailey, with Wayne Rooney's red card, because this felt like old school Wayne Rooney, frustration, lashing out on a moment of madness, the red mist coming over him, and suddenly he's off the field.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely an element of that. It was a horrible challenge. I mean, an inch either way, that could have been a really serious injury that he caused on Rossi for that one. But I did notice that he, as soon as the challenge had gone in, he put his arm up in the air. He was kind of like, and he gave him a little tap on the floor just to say, you're okay. So the red mist descended, but ascended very quickly thereafter once he realised he's done. Maybe that's a sign of his maturity at this stage of the game. But yeah, really, really terrible challenge. I think he was at least a yard away from the ball when his foot hit the back of Rossi. It's terrible.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. And then even I think the referee does the right thing of in these moments. He knows he has VAR to back him up. So he does the yellow card, then he does VAR, waves off the yellow, gives the red. And you could see even then Rooney already taking off the captain's armband as the referee's walking back out to kind of change those cards around. So I think he knew it was coming. I think it probably was just the frustration of the day, because I don't think LA came out and did anything that thought-provoking or that like different that DC couldn't have seen coming. I just think DC United were a step slow and a little bit awkward, and they kind of backed off at times they shouldn't have, and they let LAFC take advantage and kind of take control of the game rather, and that was kind of it. I mean, they were able to score 3 goals very quickly. They had a 4th later on, and I think you could kind of see that frustration boiling over for Wayne Rooney. In the moment, he takes a couple hits, he takes a couple knocks, and kind of lashes out, and I think that kind of summed up the day for DC, that it was moments of erratic play punctuated by moments of very silly play.
Yeah, that could be the subtitle to the Diego Costa story, really, couldn't it? But we're talking about DC LAFC here, of course. And this one was, I had this pegged as kind of a low-scoring draw, perhaps, because it was basically attack versus defence here. The best defence in the league against an attack that, before this game, had created 65 chances. That's 20 more than any other team. And it turns out one of those things didn't show up. It was the defence of DC United, apparently. But some of those goals as well, by the way. The Vela first goal was lovely. I think the Rossi's second was really nice, even though
the ball from Vela with the outside of the left to kind of bend it around the two players into the path of Rossi for that goal.
Yeah,
it was similar to the ball, like not similar in technique, but similar in the way it looked to De Bruyne's ball in for Gabriel Jesus.
Right.
Just that the defenders are never really going to be able to make a play on it, but it's inch perfect for the attacker to get some body part on it to turn it into the goal. And it's also worth noting that Vela missed a penalty before they even started scoring, so it could have been significantly worse for DC United. So maybe they'll count themselves lucky that it was only 4-0 and a red card to Rooney. Somehow I doubt that, because they've got a midweek game against Montreal without Wayne Rooney. I think they're probably going to be less thrilled than they would be if they had Wayne Rooney on the field. Just guessing on that one.
Just a hunch, yeah. I think you might be right there. The penalty, by the way, the slide with the arm extended, is that stonewall penalty for you? Because I feel like if I was sliding, my arm would be behind me to support my body. Mm-hmm. I'm not convinced.
It's tricky because, like, on the one hand, I would say, literally on the one hand, I would say it always feels like it's going to be a penalty because the player is gaining an advantage because they've kind of missed the challenge, but the trailing arm is able to move the ball. So in that regard, it's like the hand making the challenge. But I'm with you, though, that it does feel like a kind of natural thing that no one's going to go in for a slide tackle with their arms behind their back. That's a good way to like dislocate an elbow. Yeah, exactly. So I think you're always going to have that arm behind you, but I think there's always a decent chance it's going to be called. So while I understand why you kind of have to do that if you're the defender, I also understand why it's probably going to be given as a penalty in most situations, especially so when you've got VAR there to slow it down and make it look way worse on the 40th replay viewing.
And I'm not going to say that was going to change the result of the day, because it probably wasn't the day anyway.
So I would say this, though, Ryan. I feel like we've done a good job of covering the big games from the weekend. I appreciate your time. I was on the road most of the weekend. Happy to be back in studio chatting with you, but I appreciate you taking all the time to watch all these games and have smart, clever, insightful things to say.
Well, I don't know if I did that, but you're very welcome for talking to me for an hour or so. And I look forward to next week, of course, when we will discuss Oxford United against AC Wimbledon. AC Wimbledon, who've been in the League One relegation zone for 170 plus days and will be climbing out of it next weekend. So I look forward to talking about that with you.
And I look forward to you talking to somebody else about that. But until then, Ryan, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
My pleasure.
Listeners, thank you very much for listening. Daryl and I will be back tomorrow to talk some Champions League action. But until then, it's goodbye for now.
Champions!